Hey there, welcome to another episode of Adventure School, the series where well traveled guests come on and share their tips and tricks for how to adventure easy. Today, we are talking all about living abroad, which I think is such a cool concept. And I know this is something that a lot of people have questions about, are unsure of, and just in general are curious about. So I'm having my friend Ashly on. So yes, we're both Ashly. Hers is spelled a little differently. Let me invite her on. She is, hey Sam. So she is the founder of Risk and Reward Traveler and Adventure Essentials. Hey Ashley.
Hi. I'm doing good. How are you?
Thanks. I was just talking one about Risk and Reward Traveler. So, but now we'll get started since you're here.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't know how to work this, so this is my first live ever.
I love doing this because I remember the first time I did a live and I was super nervous, and now I've been doing them for so long. I'm just like, oh, it's no big deal. It's super casual. Hey, thanks for joining. It's Hannah and Al. So actually, basically, we're just gonna chat. There, people can leave comments or questions. So we'll kind of, if those come up, we'll kind of address that. So after that, I'm just gonna ask you about your experience living abroad. You know, your business and everything, and let's go from there.
Okay.
So maybe you can start off by telling us about you, telling us about Risk and Reward Traveler, and also telling us where you lived abroad.
Okay. So I got lucky very early in my career. I started producing product overseas. So I learned how to source. I went overseas. I saw factories, and I learned how to manufacture a lot of different things over there. I always liked doing stuff traveling beforehand, but then when I started traveling overseas by myself for business, it was like my whole world exploded. And I really kind of fell in love with Asia. I made so many friends over the years and got to see a different way of life. And I continued that throughout my career and came to a point in time where my apartment lease was up, my car lease was up, and it just felt like this is the time to make something big happen. And I had been to Taiwan twice, once for business, very quick, and then once I spent a few days there. And I just knew this is where I want to live. Which is kind of crazy to pick a country where you couldn't speak the language and go, yeah, I'm going to live there.
Right, exactly.
So
So how did you pick Taiwan though? Like what was it about it?
I felt like it had a little bit of everything. I love the beach. So it had the beach, it had mountains. I lived in a city about 2 hours south of Taipei. So it still had this big city, but kind of beachy vibe feel to it. But it also allowed me to do my work on the time zone of China. So I continued my manufacturing work and product development. But I got to just be on site. I got to be part of the meetings at the factories and work with my team in China and Taiwan and other countries. And then to travel. So I was so excited to be so close to so many different countries.
So you actually moved there and continued your job that you had in the US, right?
Yes.
And it was better because we're on like the time zone of the place that you were always chatting with. So it was like the best of all worlds.
Yes. So I did the pick up and sell everything I owned. But I didn't go out just to kind of wanderlust. I really went out as an expat. I came into a community and had to figure out how to find people to make friends. And there was a lot of English teachers. And then I connected when I lived in China into a lot of the business people would kind of come and go. So you have friends constantly coming and going.
Yes.
And yeah, so I think everyone thought I was crazy. I didn't tell my family until it was completely set. And they're like, what?
You're like, it's too late now. I'm set to go.
Yep.
I know. Everyone always thinks you're crazy until you do it. And then you're like,
Mhm.
crazy? I
As
made
soon
it
as
work.
my parents came over for a trip, they're like, "Oh, we get it."
I've never been to Taiwan, but I want to go, like mostly to have boba like every
Oh,
hour. Um, but I remember I had a layover there once, and even the airport was just like so pretty. Like it was
hmm.
so chill just to be in the airport. It didn't feel like hectic or anything. So I don't know. I really liked it. So I want to go.
I feel
Definitely.
like Taiwan might be that kind of hidden gem
Yeah.
where it's just this little tiny island that's out there, and a lot of people thought I lived in Thailand, so they'd be like, "Oh, that's cool."
They mixed it
um,
up. You're
yeah,
like, no.
but like Taiwan is so welcoming. I mean, every time I flew back from China from business, they were like, "Welcome to Taiwan," and people would. It was incredible to live in a country not being able to speak a lot of their language, and they were constantly trying to talk to me. They would smile, they would help me. I mean, they could. It's amazing what you can do without being able to speak the same language, of body language, hand signals, just gestures, and just how appreciative they were if I could speak a little bit, where I felt it was something that important for me to try to do, to speak Mandarin in a country that I chose to live in, so I should speak their language.
Yeah. At least make a concerted effort because it's
Absolutely.
Mandarin like as an adult. I'm
Very.
so you to get ready to move to Taiwan, like you said, like you sold all your stuff. Like, what are some things that you were like, okay, I'm gonna move. This is like my checklist.
Oh man, that was where I was really bad.
That was
I probably spent the most on like everyday stuff, like face wash and like feminine products and medicines, like things I didn't think I'd be able to find out there.
yeah.
I think I had an entire suitcase of just that kind of stuff. Um,
Were you able to find it there? Like, were you surprised?
yeah, you kind of find some import stores. You find some of their kind of beauty drug stores were actually they had amazing stuff. They had better stuff than some of the stuff I brought with me.
Yeah,
Um,
Asian stores have like the best skincare and
oh
everything.
yeah, for sure. And then you kind of just learn to find things that work that are local, or you make friends that suggest things. And um, I did learn a very valuable lesson when I moved from Taiwan up to China. I packed 2 suitcases with like, I don't know, I think I remember swimsuits, a few shoes, a few outfits for work, like, and then just really random stuff. And my shipment got stuck in customs for almost 60 days. So I arrived in China with practically nothing, and I just kind of learned to live with very little. And if I've learned anything throughout my couple years, almost 5 years out there, it was I really can live on very little. And I do feel lucky that I have lived in a country where we do have a lot, and we can have a lot if we want it. We have the space, we have the options. And over there, you just kind of, you really do learn your body can live with without a lot of things, including like types of food, and you really can adjust.
Yeah, yeah. I remember when we were traveling, when you say about food, I don't eat a lot of peanut butter, but for some reason the fact to not find peanut butter in South America like really bothered us. We went to grocery stores looking for peanut butter. I don't even eat that much peanut butter. I don't know why we were so obsessed with it. But when we did find it, it would be like this big and it would be like $7 like US. So we were like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a creature comfort from home or whatever. But as the time went on, we were like, oh, we don't need peanut butter. But I'm so glad you brought up the point about not needing a lot of stuff, because that kind of goes along with like my whole mission of telling people like, hey, you don't need that much stuff. It's actually easier if you travel with little, or if you have a little suitcase, but everything in it is like multifunctional and can be mixed and matched and whatnot. And it just
Exactly.
I am super stressed about upcoming trips that I have, and I'm like, okay, well, they're talking about, long wait times, and there's every airline's having these cancellations and delays, and I'm like, that just sounds like a nightmare. I don't want to get my stuff stuck in that situation, because I've had that before where our flight was delayed, and so they switched to a different airline, and by the time like hours went by, they were like, oh no, your first flight is okay, and so we tried to switch back to that flight, and they're like, no, your baggage already moved to this flight that's diverted to Portugal instead of direct to Spain. So we didn't have a choice, we had to stay with our bag. So the less stuff that you check or ship or whatever, probably just the smoother ride. But even if you end up with not a lot of stuff, you can still go on and live. And there are stores in China and in Taiwan, and pretty much most places you go. So
exactly. And then you really kind of hone in on some of the essentials. I started the business about risk and reward because I took a risk to get out into the world and live somewhere else that challenged me. And the rewards, I feel, still come to me to this day. But as my business evolved, like, the essential part has come out, where I went through all of my traveling stuff, and it's like, what did I bring on every trip? And it boiled down to a few certain things where I'm like, I always travel with this. And I learned the hard way, probably just like you, over traveling, overpacked, overweighted, right? And it was a trial and error of, I went to Thailand totally unprepared, with the wrong backpacks, with the wrong, clothing material. I packed things that made sense in the traveling I did back in the States, but not abroad. So
yeah, that's true. And it's there's some things that can go in every place, and there's some places that it's like, no, you need like a little bit more specific things. And that's why you have pieces in your suitcase too that you can mix and match with like all of those wide ranging destinations and the different clothes you need for them. But since you touched on it, I want to kind of talk about, let's talk about risk and reward and what inspired you. Like, tell us about that and what inspired you to start that from your travels.
So when I moved out overseas, I had been traveling for, maybe 8 or 9 years for business. And I always thought, oh yeah, I'm prepared. And I wasn't. I really wasn't. When I started traveling for leisure in different parts of Southeast Asia, I didn't realize how much I didn't know and how ill-prepared I was. I mean, here I thought going to Bali, I'm like, it's going to be hot and beautiful and sunny. No, it's cold and it's rainy, and you need all this gear to like keep yourself prepared. And so I just kind of started picking up things along my travels and thought, and I'd have friends that would reach out and be like, what do you suggest I bring for this? Or what do you take with you when you go here? And I just thought, I wonder if my sourcing background and my connections into my factories, I could create something that was useful, that could hopefully help prepare and maybe inspire someone else to kind of get out there outside that comfort zone. Because traveling abroad, I mean, it's a huge step, right?
Yeah, it totally is.
So totally. I wanted something, I had been thinking about it since the time I moved out to Taiwan, like, how does this make sense? What can I offer? And I still have tons of ideas that I hope someday to capitalize on. I started the business right before the pandemic. So having a beach kit when the beaches were closed was a bit difficult.
Well, but you have other items too. So just really quick, I know that you have the microfiber, or what is it called?
The microfiber towels, yep.
Yeah, which is great. Like, definitely, I travel with one of those, especially if you're packing light, because they like fold up to like this big.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the risk and reward dry bag that I plan to take on an upcoming trip. So it's a little dry bag. I know that she talks about this a lot, that in Thailand you didn't have a dry bag, and you're going to be on a boat, or if it's raining or whatever, and you just have your stuff and it's not in some kind of waterproof bag. Hey, Christina, thanks for joining. Then it's going to get wet. So dry bag because I know firsthand how important that is. And I like to go to the lake, go kayaking and stuff. So it's good for that stuff too. It floats, you have your stuff. You kind of put your stuff in there and then fold it like this and then clip it. I don't know how to explain it, but
That's perfect.
okay, you're coming to Vegas this week? Okay, let me know. Um, what else? You have in the beach please kit, which has like the hat and the sunglasses and the little
Yeah, you got a collapsible water bottle, a Bluetooth speaker. You have even a smaller waterproof coated bag. So, like, we went to the hot springs. We hiked up. So I had my waterproof bag, the big dry bag, and then I had my towel and the smaller bag. And so I don't like to hike in anything wet. So I took my swimsuit off. I threw it in the smaller bag, zipped it up. And because of the coating, it kept everything else dry around it. So I really thought of that was the kit that I took all of my own inspiration from and thought, what is it that everyone needs to have the perfect kind of tropical or exotic or beach vacation where everything's in one box delivered to your door? Stuff I have actually used in most of my travels.
right, right. So you like were inspired by things that you were like, I use these
Yeah.
things. Like, what are things that other travelers need? Which I feel like is exactly what I did, and we've talked about this before. Um, so it's also a really great thing too with like, the holidays are coming up. If people are looking for like, what are some gifts I can get for a traveler in my life? I'm not really sure what they need, but I know that they have trips coming up. Like things like these are really great, like easy things they're going to end up using. Like the dry bag for sure, microfiber towel, definitely, and a whole beach kit too. They don't even have to be going to the beach. A lot of the items are just like items for any travel.
Yeah.
So I'll put her what do you call it? Your link in when I repost the video and everything. Um, really quick, I just want to ask a few more questions about living abroad. So I just wanted to ask, how long did you live in Taiwan, and what did you do to prepare to come home? Because I think that's too.
So let's see. I lived in Taiwan for 2 years, and then I went up to China for almost 2 years. I had been in China, but I traveled so often in Taiwan, I traveled so often to China that in 1 year, spent less than 6 months in Taiwan. So in between the business travel and then for fun travel, I just decided to move to China.
Where were you in China?
I was in a city called Dongguan, which was, so you have Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Dongguan.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
And that was what was unexpected about China was the amount of friends that I made there. And there a lot of what inspired me also for my brand was a ton of women out there solo, like living life. They were out doing whatever they wanted to do, traveling, kind of living a very different life than I've seen in the past. And it was just, we'd come together and we would exchange travel tips. We'd travel together. It was just it was like I had 16 sisters out there.
Were they or were they people like all over the world?
We had everyone from all over, but we also had like local friends as well that like taught us about China and the way of life, and to really be able to experience China as a country, as like a local, was priceless. I mean, I'm so grateful I got to see that, and not always just on a business level like I had seen before.
Right. Yeah.
So
it's only to like travel to a place and then to live in a place.
Exactly.
Like, very different.
Yes. Like one of my favorite quotes about traveling was like, always remember the city you're in was built for the people who live there, not the people who travel through. And having experience being a traveler and then being an expat and living somewhere, I'm like, wow, that's really, I get it. I get it why I get frustrated with certain things, but it makes sense when you spend more time in a country.
Yeah. And the people are the people who made it that way, is what makes perfect sense to them most times.
Exactly.
What did you do when you had to like come back to the US, or when you decided to come back to the US? Like, what was that process like?
It was super tough. It was to make the decision to come home, and And even that I had the choice, that I had the freedom to be able to choose wherever I wanted to be. So for me, it was a very interesting perspective that to not take that for granted. So I could pick up my entire life and choose any country I wanted to go to and live in it. It was saying goodbye to a life I had actually gotten comfortable with, friends that I knew it would be a struggle to see again because of distance. But yeah, I came home right before the pandemic, so I didn't mean to. It was really strange. I had reverse homesickness, and I still have it sometimes. I still miss that expat life, because even when you're traveling, you don't have to be an expat. That excitement of the unknown and figuring out how to get back to your hotel or hostel that night, you're like, yeah, I'm getting it. I'm understanding it. And the food and the people and the friends you make, it's different. It's not kind of normal life in the States as it can be when you're out traveling or living somewhere else.
Yeah, that's very true. So, did you have to get a visa to work and live there, right?
Yeah, so I had to, for both Taiwan and China. So I had to have certain visa requirements, and sometimes I have to go break my visa and travel into other countries. And
yeah.
Visa.
Sorry, I'm gonna turn the camera so I can plug in my phone. Sorry. So what would be like a piece of advice that you would give somebody who wants to like make the leap to live abroad or experience that kind of a expat lifestyle, at least temporarily, like you did?
Good question. I mean, just do it. That's terrible, but like,
I feel like that's the answer to every final question of this series is always just do it.
I'm not gonna lie. It's super scary, and you're jumping outside. You're not just stepping; you are literally leaping outside of a comfort zone. But I will tell you this: I slowly started working towards it. So it wasn't like one day I picked up and decided I'm selling everything, I'm leaving. I started taking local small solo trips, and they got a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, a little bit further away from home, and I felt. Yeah, I really did the work to feel comfortable, be like, I'm ready to do this, because I went out completely solo. But I worked up to it. So I don't want to put this facade that it was just one day an epiphany. I put some things out into the universe, and it just seemed to work out for me. But I did work up to it. So take that first step, take that first solo hike or that first solo road trip, or, go a few hours from home, and just see how you feel, and see it seems to build, and there's momentum to it, is what I've experienced. And I'm sure you've had something similar, where after that first foreign country, you're like, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can figure some stuff out.
You get some like confidence, like once you get like some experience under your belt. And I think that's kind of the key, most of these experiences. And it's funny that you say, like go a few hours from home, like do some solo trips. I remember one of the earlier adventure schools we did with Angie of the Flexitarian Travels. She said the same exact thing. Like she does a lot of solo traveling, so it was the same exact advice. Like just do a little trip, do a little road trip a few hours away. Like go on this weekend away or whatever. Take a flight by yourself and see what happens. Not everybody, most people probably don't just jump into things blind, not knowing, because imagine you're actually not ready to do solo travel or to live abroad alone, and you just go. And then how like you'll feel, or how you have to work through that. It really is kind of like something that you build up to.
Yeah.
But don't do it. That still means jump into it. Just it's a little bit more planning and preparation to make yourself comfortable. So I think
Absolutely.
That's what. Okay. All right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Ashly, for joining us.
Yeah.
And checking out her website. It's Risk and Reward. Is it just Risk and Reward?
Yeah, riskandreward.com. Yep.
Riskandreward.com. That's where you can find all of her adventure essentials, her Beach Please kit, the towels, the dry bag that I have at some point in the next few weeks. She also has blogs on there where she kind of interviews other women travelers, and they're called Adventure Hers. Like, so cute. and just kind of her story. And I'm sure her DMs are open if anyone has any questions about living abroad. But other than that, do you have any final words or anywhere that else that we should catch you on social media?
I mean, just adventure.essentials is my main page. I've been exploring Utah, so taking advantage of my backyard, as we are slowly getting back into travel. So, but thanks for having me, Ash. This was awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. That is all. Thank
All
you.
right. All right.
I'll see you guys on the next adventure school.
Thanks,
Bye.
Ash. Bye.